The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf.
The Author's Shelf. The Author's Shelf. It's about books and stuff.
Good afternoon, I'm Georgie Donahay and welcome to The Author's Shelf. I'll be chatting today with authors Michelle Hamer and Doug Macleod. Michelle's an author of both adult and children's books and has written for almost every major publication in the country. Doug Macleod writes books and in his previous life wrote for Fast Forward, Full Frontal and Kath and Kim. That should be an interesting conversation. He's currently writing for children and will chat with us about his books a little later in the show. I'll announce the winners of our Dave Pilkey competition and I'll tell you how you can enter today's giveaway. Now, if you'd like to interact with us during today's show, you can send us a message via our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Author's Shelf, or you can tweet us at The Author's Shelf or even after the show. I'd love to hear from you too. Before we sit back and relax, I just want to say a big thank you to Elisa Darlinson and the New South Wales Writers Centre for a fantastic festival yesterday, the Kids and YA Festival at the New South Wales Writers Centre. Wonderful time. Thank you very much for having me chair one of your panels, and a bit of a celebrity moment for me. Tick off something on my bucket list. I got to meet the wonderful Burry Monty Pryor, and he might be on a show in not too distant future. Wouldn't that be good? Okay, now sit back and relax as I bring you the stories beyond the page. You're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SR 99.7 FM, Sound of the Sutherland Shire. Coming up next, Michelle Hamer. Welcome back. It's time to introduce today's first guest. Michelle Hamer is a mother of 4 children and is a nationally recognised journalist who also happens to write books. She began her writing journey, as a journalist for the Sunday Age, the Herald Sun and the Courier Mail newspapers. Michelle has also spent time writing for the Sydney Morning Herald, the Fin Review, Woman's Day, New Idea and almost every major publication within Australia. Michelle's adult works include Delivery by Appointment, Gucci Mamas, Chanel Sweethearts and It Couldn't Happen to Me, but it did. But she has put all that aside for the time being and settled nicely into the children's genre. Her Meet Daisy books, as part of the Our Australian Girls series with Penguin Books, has captivated little ladies around the country. Here to chat with us about her interesting career so far is Michelle Hamer. Michelle, welcome to The Author's Shelf.
Thanks, Georgie. It's lovely to be here.
Michelle, I always begin by asking my guests what is their story. So please tell us, what is the Michelle Hamer story?
Well, Georgie, it's a rollicking and exciting adventure story of intrigue and drama.
Oh, it sounds like it. I love it already.
Well, at least in my head, you know.
That's a good start.
Yes, well, most of the time it's just me in a chair in front of a computer giving other people lives of drama and intrigue, but at least I get to live vicariously through them.
That's lucky. That sounds great.
So, yes, it really is just me at the computer, and just my children now are adults and teenagers, so they sort of slip in and out of the background and, need lifts everywhere and lots of transport and lots of food, and then suddenly they've all disappeared and the house goes quiet and I can write a bit. And your life is pretty much your own again? Yes. It's sort of waxes and wanes a bit, you know. It's quite full on sometimes, and then they're all gone, and I can get stuck into the writing, which is a lovely opportunity to have. All right. Well, tell us, why did you want to become a writer? I don't know that I remember making the decision in about grade 3, and I think, as you do in those early days when you think everything is possible, but I loved reading so much. It meant so much to me when I was a child, to have books to disappear into and lands to explore, and it all felt so very real and rich to me that I couldn't imagine doing anything but trying to emulate that and create those sorts of worlds and adventures for children. And then, of course, as I grew up, the realities sort of hit me a bit, and I'd never met an author. I'd never seen an author. People like Enid Blyton just seemed like such great fantasies. It didn't seem they could actually be real. So that dream got a little bit altered, and I thought that journalism seemed to be the way that I could write and get paid for it, and it seemed a little bit more realistic. And but then I've been lucky to, as I've gone along, and actually move into the author world as well.
So you've also worn the journalist hat. Which is your favourite, journalist or author?
I think it's author, because having moved into the children's genre has been such a delight, and has really been that dream that I had back when I was 8 years old to write children's books, and to achieve that almost 40 years later has been such an incredible dream come true. And to write the Daisy books has been so delightful. That's the best thing I've ever done. That's my favourite, any kind of writing.
Oh, that's the best kind, isn't it?
Yes.
All right. Well, tell us, let's just move away from the children's for a second. Tell us about Gucci Mamas.
Well, Gucci Mamas was just started off as a bit of fun. I had written the Caesarean book, Delivery by Appointment, which is a handbook for women considering or facing a caesarean. I'd had 4 caesareans, and I kept saying, there's no good book on caesareans. There's no information for women in Australia wanting to have a caesarean or needing to have a caesarean. And eventually I just thought, oh, for goodness sake, I'm going to have to write it. And having no medical background, it was, a bit of a huge stretch. So that it took a lot of work and a lot of effort, and I'm really proud of it. It has lots of useful information for women. And so after that, I was feeling a bit brain dead, and I was actually having coffee with the mums at school and saying, oh, I don't know what to write now. I want to write something a bit more fun. And a woman who I just met that morning, she came along for coffee for the first time, said, oh, well, why don't you write a bestseller? And, of course, I looked at her. I was, jaded journalist and author, and said, yes, because it's that easy.
I love that. Why don't you write a bestseller? How hard is it to become the next J.K. Rowling? I actually had a lady the other day call me and said she wants to become a writer so she doesn't have to re-enter the mundane world of having a real job. She just wants a job that's 9 to 3. And I thought, I think you've picked the wrong profession, but anyway.
Yes. I was telling I teach literature to gifted children, and I was telling my group yesterday that authors generally get about 10% of the cover price of a book. And they were absolutely shocked. And they were sort of saying, why can't you give each of us a copy of your book? Why can't we all have one? And I said, look, I'd love to give you each a copy of the book, but I only get 10, and after that I actually have to buy them, and when they sell I get about $1.50 each. And I think there's this sort of perception that if you're an author, you're all J.K. Rowling sitting in mansions. and the truth, as you know, is that most of us do it because it's a passion.
Absolutely. You do it for the love of it.
Absolutely.
There's only a few that can sustain doing it full time and making a living out of it.
Yes, and even I've been a professional writer for I don't even want to do the maths anymore, but it's more than 25 years. And even in the journalism world and within media, that's incredibly hard to sustain. And to do it independently, it's just really, really hard work. And with glimpses of glamour. Every now and again there's a little shine of glamour where you get invited to an opening night, or you get to travel overseas to do a travel story or something like that, but that the glamour is definitely very low on the schedule of things. 25
years, you must be onto your 3rd or 4th castle by now?
Yes, I'm really racking them up.
Okay. All right, tell us about the Australian Girls series.
The Australian Girls series. Well, I was reviewing children's books for the Sunday Age, which was a wonderful, wonderful job to have. And I was sent this series and devoured the 4 that I was sent, and thought, this is just beautiful. This historical series set in different parts of Australia, written by different authors, each with a different protagonist at a different time in history. So, but with very, unifying themes of strong female protagonists and lots of lovely history, but adventure, and just so beautifully done. And when I spoke with the PR lady at Penguin Next, I said, "This is beautiful. This is the sort of thing I have always wanted to write. Could I pitch for it? How would I go about that?" And so she put me in contact with Jane Godwin, who is the children's publisher at Penguin. And she sent me out. She said, look, this is what you would need to do. She knew that I'd written adult novels and adult non-fiction. She said, if you wanted to do this, this is what you would do. And it's a really detailed process of having to write an outline for 4 books that fit within one narrative arc and are historically accurate, but also each book has its own narrative arc, so that you can pick up any book in the series, read it, and feel like you've had a satisfying journey, but then it will also lead on to the next book. So that was a real challenge, and but I really enjoyed the research, and having that journalism background helped with the research. And so I chose Daisy, I dreamed up Daisy, who lives in Melbourne in the 1930s. So the Depression has just hit, and everything's changing very rapidly around her. So it was fascinating to do the research, and then to be able to throw the element of fiction and adventure into that was just, yes, it was very good fun. So it took me about a year from speaking with Jane for the first time, and via email, and then to getting the contract for the book. So there's lots of sort of toing and froing, and then finally I got to meet her in the flesh, and they said, yes, go ahead. So that was an enormous thrill.
That's excellent, and I love the Daisy books, and I've actually got one to give away later in the show, which you can hear more about very shortly. Tell us, who is Cate Kendall?
Cate Kendall is a pseudonym that my writing partner and I came up with when we wrote the 4, we started with Gucci Mamas, then we went to Versace Sisters, Chanel Sweethearts, and, golly, I've forgotten the 4th one. Jeepers. Well, there's a 4th one in there. So we wrote those through Random House. Gucci Mamas was a bestseller, which was very exciting, and then we got commissioned to do the rest. And because we obviously have 2 different names, we decided to write under one name. And so just sitting in the back of a cab one day, we thought, who are we going to be? What are we going to be? And Cate Kendall came up.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It's that easy. Thanks for joining me this afternoon on The Author's Shelf. I'm chatting with children's author Michelle Hamer. Michelle, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out as a writer?
Well, when I teach professional writing or writing to children, the thing that I say all the time is read, just read, and write. I mean, I know it sounds so basic, but I think there's so many beautiful stories and books and so many amazing authors and writers who've gone before us, and they leave us a wonderful, rich legacy of literature that is not only a joy to read, but it can teach us so much about reading. And about writing.
Excellent. Now, what's the best writing tip you've been given?
I remember when I started out as a cadet journalist, and that was very painful. I'd come out of high school where, of course, you were able to wax lyrical in an essay and get carried away, and nobody minded. And then suddenly I was in the newspaper world where every centimetre counted and you didn't have room to carry on. So I would start these great essays, and then my editor, who was very tough, would take this red pen and she would just scroll across my page and cut it all out, and it would, these great 300, 400 word essays would be reduced to 2 paragraphs in the paper.
Ouch.
Yes, and I think just it was very brutal, but I certainly learnt very fast that an economy with words was how it had to be, and that journalism background has really helped in terms of writing to a deadline. And there's just no not getting it done. You can't say, oh gosh, I just didn't finish that 300 words today, because there will be a hole in the paper.
Absolutely.
So it's a baptism of fire in some ways.
The dog ate my homework. Can I do it tomorrow?
Yes, there's just no answers. There's no excuses. It just has to be done. And that has taught me over the years, to write fast, to get to the point, not mince words. And that has really helped, I think, with my fiction writing, just to get to the point point fast and, not muck around with a lot of preamble. And it's very hard as a writer not to just love the words that you're writing and love them so much that you forget there actually has to be a point and there has to be a plot, and that plot has to move, and that you're actually serving the reader and not yourself.
And that's why we have 10,000 edits.
That's why we have those brutal editors.
So I think what you're saying there is journalism's helped you refine your talent. And another thing is we need to develop as writers thick skins, because there's lots of red pen moments.
I think the journalism really did develop the thick skin, because by the time it appears in the newspaper, particularly in those early days, so many people have hacked it apart.
Yes.
And you just have to move on, because there's another 5 stories to be written by the end of the week, and you've got to keep moving. And so it does help you very much develop that thick skin. Though, of course, when you're writing fiction, it is something that, it feels so much more precious to you, and it's your story. And
your baby.
And, Daisy's been my girl, and, so there still is that. You do have a vested interest, of course,
What's coming up next? More Daisy books?
Well, Daisy number 3 came out this week, which is Daisy in the Mansion, which I just had so much fun writing. Just that sort of fantasy of a poor girl being taken off to live in a mansion and all the the luxury.
Poor girl.
I know, but dreadfully, because these people are trying to adopt her, and Daisy has a family, but she just can't seem to find them at the moment.
Oh.
So it's quite a conflict for Daisy, and. So then Daisy on the Track will come out, I think in about 2 or 3 months. I've finished it, and my lovely editor, Davina, who is never harsh. She is just gently editing it now. And
good choice of words.
yes. So she'll finish that soon, and then that one will be out, and that will be the end of Daisy's story.
Do you think there's more for you in the Australian Girl series?
I'm hoping so, yes. I've got a new character who I'm hoping will see the light of day. And also Penguin this year launched Do You Dare, which is the companion series aimed at boys.
Ooh, okay.
Also, yes, historical fiction. And so I'm hoping that my pitch for that, which I've just about finished, isn't that the life of the writer? Just about finished, always just about finished. I'm hoping that will come out as well in the next year or so.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me on the Author Shelf today. I've had a good time. I hope you have too. It's been very brief, I know that. No, that's right. It's been lovely, and it's always nice to talk about books and writing, and it just reminds me that I could just keep doing that for a very long time, just talking. I know, I can hear how passionate you are in your voice, and it's wonderful. I love talking to other people, other passionate book people, so that's excellent. Now, if you'd like to find out more about Michelle, you can check out her new website, michellehamerauthor.com. No AU on the end, is there? No, there's no AU, and my wonderful son has just very quickly this morning been building that for me, that new website. So at the moment it may say under construction, but in the next day or so we will fill it up with information about Daisy, my previous books, and the new projects that I'm working on. So it's a new website. It's brand new this morning. I had a previous website which was more journalism focused, which didn't really serve my new children audience, which is just such a thrill to think that I have a children audience. I heard from another author friend the other day that she'd done a talk in a school, and a little girl had told her that her favourite author was Mitchell Hamer. Oh. And that was a first for me to be someone's favourite author in the children's genre, so that was pretty exciting. Even if I have to be Mitchell Hamer, I'm happy about that. That's lovely. Oh, thank you very much for joining us, Michelle Mitchell Hamer. And I hope you've had a good time. And yes, Michelle Hamer author.com. In the next few days, her website will be up and running. Now it's time to introduce my second guest for the day. Doug Macleod spent the 1980s writing for ABC Radio's comedy department before heading over to Channel 10's The Comedy Company to take up residency as the head writer. Doug also spent time writing for Fast Forward, Full Frontal, and was the script editor for the Kath and Kim series at the ABC. Now, away from his comedy writing, Doug co-wrote 5 episodes of Sea Change. In 2008, Doug received the Fred Parsons Award for contribution to Australian comedy at the Australian Writers Guild Award. Doug developed and co-wrote the animated series Dog Star, which is screened all over the world. He's received 2 Australian Writers Guild Awards and has also won the inaugural John Hind Award for science fiction. Doug now writes books full-time and has so far had 7 novels published with Penguin. The most recent is The Life of the Teenage Body Snatcher, a CBC honour book in 2012, and was shortlisted for the Victorian Premier's Literary Awards and the Aureolus Award. The Shiny Guys was shortlisted for the 2013 CBCA Book of the Year Awards. Doug Macleod, welcome to the Author's Shelf.
Hello, Georgie.
That was huge. That was so tongue-tied. You've won so many things. You've done so many things.
Incredibly clever, which I'm afraid your readers will learn quite soon that I'm not. Now, we're podcasting, aren't we?
We're live, so yes, it will be available on podcast later on this afternoon.
So we'll be around until the heat death of the universe, basically.
Absolutely.
These words will never go.
Well, that's if I can get home from the station in one piece and edit the show this afternoon. So, that's all good.
Well,
yeah.
But in that case, I probably should just correct one minor thing.
Oh, okay.
My latest book is actually called Tigers on the Beach. It's a young adult novel, a rom-com for lads, the usual thing, and it's just come out, so I thought I should possibly correct you there.
Well, sorry, I was just testing you to see if you actually knew what your last book was, because I've actually got that book to give away later in the show.
Well, testing's not a bad idea, because I get a lot of testing these days. I'm still in stroke recovery. I had this terrible stroke a few years ago.
Oh, dear.
And they still give me all these tests every week to make sure that I'm okay, and I do rehab every morning. I'm just back from the gym, learning how to walk properly.
Oh, dear.
Oh, it's okay. The trouble is, though, I don't know when I'm able to write again. It's very hard to know. And so the Tigers on the Beach is a novel that was actually, I did 3 drafts before my stroke and then 2 more after, which was the last 2 drafts are always important. That's when you do all the lapidary work you need to do. And I did it while I was still not totally convinced that I'd recovered. The trouble is when you're writing a book, I don't really know if I am recovered as a writer. If I was a bricklayer, I'd know, because I'd be able, I can lay bricks now, I can make that wall, I'm fine. With a writer, it's no tools.
Exactly. Well, no, it's out there and it's good, and we've got a copy to give away later in the show. So tell us, Doug, why did you want to be a writer?
I'm not sure I know. I think it was because I was lucky enough to be brought up in a family where books were kind of heroic. It was, my dad married Mum, and in order to actually marry her, he had to, I just realised I told you my mother married my father. How extraordinary. Dad married Mum, and one of the conditions was that if he married her, she made him read books. And he started reading all the books she liked, which were kind of kids' books. So I heard them at the same time as Dad learned them. And he loved them, so that kind of helped.
So your parents, you think, helped guide you into this career that you've chosen as writing. Now, when creating a story, do you create your characters or the plot first?
I think, it's very hard to say which comes first. I noticed that you have a Creative Kids Tales website where you actually encourage emerging writers. And well done you. All I can say is it's terribly hard. I wish I could give you a key here, but
I like asking this question because it's a bit of the chicken and the egg question. Personally, when I'm writing something, the characters speak to me first, then everything else comes later. So I like to hear what other people, what comes first for them. If a character, whispers something in their ear and they think, oh, okay, you've got a story to tell, and then you sit down, or you think up a plot and then the characters are born after you've written that plot or after you've come up with the plot idea.
Where do your characters come from? Do they come from Are they based on real life people or?
No, children's books. So no, not real life people at all.
It's interesting to know, isn't it? Can you do that? I mean, how much of a person's life can you borrow for a book?
I know. It's a tricky one, isn't it?
Well, sometimes you have to tell them, and if they... I mean, I had to credit my friend Barry Dickens, who gave me some good gags that I used in The Shiny Guys, which is a novel about a kid who's having a rotten time. He ends up in a psych ward, and I can't tell you, there's a kind of a spoiler involved in his travelling to and fro. But I had to actually thank Barry and acknowledge him, Barry Dickens, who's another author for kids and adults, mainly adults, and like you, a journalist, or like Michelle, I should say.
Yes.
A journalist, yes.
Okay, all right. Now, you have a very interesting website.
So do you.
No, I'm sorry. I think you trumped me on this one. Your website is, you have to go and click on the nose on your website to go in. Now, I went and clicked on your nose, and then I got this little message pop up and said, no, click on the baby's nose. Where did this idea come from? It's very funny.
I made that website with Grant Gittis, who really deserves a shout-out. He's a wonderful designer, very funny. I had a great week or two working with Grant on that. I also worked with him on a book for Ford Street, which is Paul Collins' publishing company.
Yes.
Very fine publisher. And it was called My Extraordinary Life and Death. And that is a ridiculous book of cartoons, basically. And Grant Gittis really helped me with that. It was terrific fun. I always like to laugh when I'm working if I can.
That helps. Now, you have... I saw on your... I'm not sure if it's on your website, but when I was researching you, I came across information about you received a letter from John Cleese.
Good heavens, yes, I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was rather strange. John Cleese was, first of all, a god to teenagers when I was a teenager, which was about 30 years ago. A bit more than 30 years ago, I'm afraid to say. And we adored the Python program.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it for the wordplay, but also I love those wonderful the animations that Terry Gilliam did.
Yes.
But my book had just come out, my first book, and I was being handled by a PR person who was also handling John Cleese at that time, and he got the book by her, and he sent me a letter from London, which was totally unsolicited. I didn't sort of beg him to write me. He just sent a letter out of the blue saying how much he'd enjoyed a poem in particular, which was his daughter's favourite, which was incredibly kind of him, and it's almost like being told, you will be a writer.
What an endorsement. That's just a wonderful thing to have. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's on my site. It's a fairly, it's a gentle, sweet little supportive letter.
I know, I saw it. I was just, oh, wow. So excellent. Welcome back. You're listening to The Author's Shelf on 2SSR. I'm chatting this afternoon with author Doug Macleod. Doug, welcome back. Do you prefer writing for children or writing for TV?
Well, I mentioned before in my interview that I like to laugh when I'm working, and of course that's hard to do if you're on your own. You get locked up. But on television, I very much like the social aspect of working on a show like Cat and Kim, which was a very, very good product, and also Jane Turner, Gina Riley, who play the eponymous foxy ladies of Fountain Lakes. They're both wonderful writers, and so it was always they had no shortage of ideas. It was just joyful. But I'm also a control freak, and I used to produce a lot of TV shows and indeed write TV scripts, and it very rarely ended up the way I wanted it. So I suppose with a book, it's the most direct way of communication with a reader. There's very little that you have to rely on other people, other than they make the cover look nice, and you have an editor who says, well, that's spelled wrongly and it's very embarrassing, so fix that. I think it's hard. When it's going well, I love writing for teens, and when it's not going well, I loathe it. And right now it's not going well because, of course, I'm just not sure. In the last 12 months, I've written 2 novels, both of which I wouldn't dare submit to a publisher. because I know they're wrong. I know how they're wrong, and one day I might fix them, but right now they're not going anywhere.
But aren't we always critical of our own work?
Well, we have to be, and that's why I like your idea of getting together with other emerging writers. I love that term, by the way. Have you emerged yet?
I feel I'm very, very close. I've been actually shortlisted for a CYA award, which I'm going to collect next week, and I'm hoping for, well, I'll either get first, second or third. Fingers crossed, but I'm not going to jinx what one I say that I want to get. So I think I'm very, very close. Yes, I'm getting
Good
some.
luck, Georgie.
Thank you.
I'm a survivor of the slush pile, believe it or not. After writing my first few books when I was a kid, and just between you and me, and our listeners.
Okay, we'll just tell everyone don't listen to this. Okay, go, Doug.
I think I was indulged a bit as a kid because I was young, and they let me jump up and down and be silly. And in the last 10 years, I made a real effort to actually shift my focus more to young adult novels, and it's been a real joy to. Well, first of all, to read a lot of good writers. I hadn't even heard of Sonia Hartnett before I decided to become a young adult writer, and I couldn't believe how great she was, how fantastic her work was. I'm reading Barracuda now by Chris Cholkos, and that's almost a young adult novel too. I think that they do use it in some schools. I'm enjoying it very much. Yes, there's a whole world of books that I wasn't aware of. I was completely ignorant of because I've been working in television for 20 years.
The YA market definitely opens your eyes, doesn't it?
It does.
Tell us about, you've won a string of awards for your animated series Dog Star.
Yeah, it's great.
Tell us about that.
Well, Dog Star is just a joy. We've done 52 episodes. They're half-hour episodes. I write it with Philip Dolkin, so there is that sense of camaraderie. We have to be quite, well, even though we're friends, we have to be critical of each other's work when necessary. But luckily, Philip is a very good writer who's done a lot of TV and film work. And this is the first TV show that I totally invented. And then it was built on by the producers and the wonderful animators, Scott Van den Bosch in particular, the main designer. But look, I really recommend it. It's on Saturday mornings.
What channel? Where can we watch it?
You don't have Win. I think it's Win, yeah.
Is it Win, is it? That's all right. Just go out there and Google Dog Star by Doug Macleod, and you'll be able to, I'm sure there'll be things on YouTube as well.
Heaps. And yes, very much so. And also, there is a great website for Dog Star. But the trouble is, everything is called Dog Star. I didn't know the title was so overused. And so you have to look pretty hard. You type in Dog Star animated series or whatever, because
or type in Dog Star.
Keanu Reeves band, and Keanu Reeves is a really cool dude.
But nothing to do with your Dog Star.
No, I'm not him.
So Dog Star and Doug Macleod, and that should narrow the search down. Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I'm chatting with author Doug Macleod. Doug, which of your books did you enjoy writing the most?
Definitely The Life of a Teenage Body Snatcher.
And that leads me into my next question. Tell us about The Life of a Teenage Body Snatcher.
Well, it's historical, funny fiction. I just found out an amazing thing about the law, which was that for the first 30 years or so of the 1800s in England, it was actually not illegal to dig up a body from a grave and sell it to a doctor or a surgeon. The doctors needed these bodies to teach their students anatomy. It wasn't enough just to show them, Gray's anatomy. They had to actually get in there and see what a body was like inside, and they discovered good things like, appendices, for example. We don't really need them, and they can actually get quite infected and poison the blood. So we have to thank for that. What surprised me is that some these body snatchers weren't actually breaking the law, but of course it was immoral and horrible what they were doing. So I've made a group of very moral body snatchers. They're gentlemen.
Okay.
And they, this is very interesting because many people wanted their bodies left to science. They were quite happy to have their bodies dissected after they died. the trouble is the family would never allow it, even if it was in the will. They would never allow it. And I've got this contrivance whereby the people who are doing the body snatching, or resurrectionism, as they called it back then, only do it to people who willed it, to people who wanted to actually have it done.
Right.
So that's their...
So that's
it was a joy to write, because I loved reading about the period. It was a wonderful time, and it's basically, it happens so quickly. When you get an idea like that, it was quite, the whole story just poured out. It took me, I suppose, about 6 weeks to write a full draft.
That's really quick. Yeah, that's great. If
Yeah,
only they were all like that.
Normally, 1,000 words a day is good for me.
So
that was extraordinary.
The life of a teenage body snatcher. Now, we've almost come to the end of our interview, sadly, Doug. Tell us what's coming up next for you.
I don't really know. I'm looking forward to the Children's Book Council Awards, because a little picture book I wrote about sustainability has been shortlisted. But I think you'd have to say I'm pretty long odds. It's a very good list up against Sean Tan. So.
Still, it's excellent to be shortlisted there. Congratulations for that.
I'm very happy. I think that was kind of a little vote of confidence from people.
It's nice because it gives you a little sticker on the front of your book now, doesn't it?
Yes, and look, I had no idea, because the feedback is important. I hate to say it, and a bad review really can spoil your day. But sometimes they do. The trouble is, you get a bad review once the book's done, and you think, oh my God, I can't fix it up now. What can I do? That's why you want your editor to give you bad reviews along the way, or to give you at least directions that you would not have perhaps chosen yourself. So coming up next, well, I did write a sequel to The Body Snatcher, but the sequel ended up being more of a kind of a zombie story.
Okay.
And the zombies had totally saturated the market. There were just zombie books everywhere.
Yes.
Pride and Prejudice and zombies. And it was the only way I could make it work, though. I love the idea of Thomas and his mates digging up the recently interred body of a man who wanted his body donated to science. Whilst alongside them, one of the bodies happily digs itself out of the grave.
Okay. On that note, thank you very much, Doug, for being on today's edition of The Author's Shelf.
Well, my pleasure, Georgia, and good on you with all the work you're doing, getting the emerging writers.
Thank you very much,
together.
and I hope you're fully recovered very soon, and we'd love to chat with you again.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. And you can find out more about Doug Macleod on his very interesting website, Doug Macleod, spelled MACLEOD.com.au, and look for that nose to click on. Thanks very much, Doug. Are you an emerging author or illustrator? Are you serious about taking that next step on your creative journey? Why not visit thecreativekidstales.com.au? There you can have a full author or illustrator profile, including displaying your work, networking with others. You'll also find useful tools such as a comprehensive publishers listing, writing tips, competition information, author interviews, book reviews, and loads more. Visit the Creative Kids Tales website today. What are you waiting for? creativekidstales.com.au. That's all for this edition of The Author's Shelf. It's come around so quick. Thanks for joining me. On my next show, I will be chatting with Nick Falk and Tony Flowers. Tony Flowers will actually be in the studio, and I'm hoping he can get out his pencil and draw a couple of pictures for me. Tony is, of course, the illustrator, and Nick is the author of the new Billy is a Dragon series. Fantastic 4-book series. I'm going to chat more about that on the next